Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, August 26th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the state of Virginia and the Republican Party in this expected to be competitive, or maybe not, 2025 governor's race, where we are starting to see that the Virginia GOP, an article today says they are growing cautiously optimistic in the governor's race. Now, if you heard the hesitancy in my voice, there's a reason for that. When I read this article, I thought that maybe this was an opinion piece rather than a plain reporting piece, because I felt that there was no way in reality in which the Republican Party of Virginia felt as if they were in a strong enough position that they could even say that they were cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic reminds me of how I think many people feel in elections where your candidate has a 40 to 45% chance of victory. Maybe they're not the favorites, but they certainly do have fighting chance. And in reading this article, I quickly realized that it wasn't that there was anything that was saying that Abigail Spanberger had a major scandal coming out, or that the Democratic Party had not fundraised enough, or that Winsome Sears had a stellar performance at a rally that had been broadcast to every Virginia resident. It wasn't anything about that. It was merely a brand new Roanoke College poll that showed Abigail Spanberger with a 7-point advantage. Yes, you heard that correctly. 7-point advantage over Winsome Sears in this governor's race. Now, what struck me as really shocking was that, first of all, being cautiously optimistic about being 7 points down 3 months out from the election is not exactly the best place to be. When I read this and I tracked it, I was thinking, maybe they're making an argument that because Terry McAuliffe, at this point in time 4 years ago, had been leading in the polls, not by 7, but had been leading in the polls, that they had made up enough ground between August and November that Glenn Youngkin was able to win. But it was more than that. I think when we see what this data is telling us, something that I think was very interesting that wasn't mentioned in the article that really provides broader context as to why I think the Virginia Republican Party is arguably in a much more dire position than maybe this article headline might actually let on, is that when you read through it all, one thing that is notably absent is the weighting of this poll. And typically I don't like to get into the nitty-gritty about polls in general. I think that often they provide us just as a piece of information. It's not the end-all be-all, and it just adds to our electoral analysis. But something about this poll felt off. It was shocking to see that the lead had reduced to 7 points in such a drastic period of time. Roanoke College released a poll back in May showing Spanberger with a 17-point advantage. And as much as I don't think that Spanberger would win by 17, I also think she will easily clear the 7-point margin. And so I had to do a bit of investigating, and what I found was right at the very bottom. They release all these polls here. Spanberger leads over Earl Sears, Winsome Sears, and it narrows in the state. But at the very bottom, you will find that based off what it was, they said the data was statistically weighted for gender, race, age, and education and political party. Okay, that doesn't make any difference. That makes sense. But weighting was done to match the 2021 Virginia exit poll. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if we remember the coverage that we had of this Virginia governor's race, we covered 3 of them so far, including this one. In 2021, those Virginia exit polls were a lot like this. They showed numbers. Who was supporting McAuliffe? Who was supporting Youngkin? Who was voting in which direction? And by the end of the evening, Glenn Youngkin won the race. So let's get this straight. The Virginia poll that is inspiring Republicans that they are cautiously optimistic now about their odds in the governor's race was a poll that was weighted to match the 2021 electorate. The same electorate that voted for Glenn Youngkin by 2 points. The same electorate that in this poll, despite it being weighted to favor the Republican Party, not only gives Winsome Sears such a low percentage of the vote that Abigail Spanberger wins a Youngkin +2 electorate by 7 points. The 2021 weight on a 2025 poll, and Democrats still lead by nearly the same margin that Ralph Northam won by in 2017, tells me everything that I need to know about this race. Winsome Sears is going to lose this governor's race. Not much is going to change that. The Virginia race has only increasingly gotten better for the Democratic Party, and arguably, this data only confirms that. As much as this has been used to boost and propel Republican feelings about the race, it's facts over feelings in every single day, including this one. And taking a look at what the data is telling us from Roanoke College, that a Youngkin +2 electorate is choosing Spanberger by 7. I can guarantee you the exit polls of 2025 will look radically different than that of 2021. Just as the exit polls of 2017 looked radically different than that of 2021. Because those who vote in an off-cycle governor election, not a midterm and not a presidential, are often those who feel engaged, enraged, and wanting to vote in an election. And in 2017, at this point, Biden's approval rating was in the negative. Terry McAuliffe in 2021, failed to capture and usher in prime Democratic voting constituencies, especially in the Northern Virginia area. And so Glenn Youngkin was able to pull ahead. Winsome Sears will not have that benefit. She is not benefiting from an unpopular Democratic president. She's not benefiting from a Democratic candidate who had a huge gaffe on the debate stage that had been ran ad after ad after ad. Abigail Spanberger is in a very strong lead in the state of Virginia. And like I said, I do not imagine that much changes that. Spanberger leading in this most recent poll too by 7 points might be able to be spun as a narrowing and tightening of the race. Well, yes, if the margin goes from +17 to +7, that is in fact a narrowing. But the way at which you reach the narrowing by concocting an electorate that voted for the last and incumbent Republican governor by 2 points is still backing the Democrat by 7, there's not much here for the Republican Party to be cautiously optimistic about. And as the odds get worse and worse for Winsome Sears, it's fascinating to see the Republican Party try to spin where they are. For instance, the governor's election, Abigail Spanberger has a 97% chance at victory. State Navigate here does the races. They got every single House of Delegates race right back in 2023. It comes down to the lieutenant governor's race. Ghazala Hashmi has an 88% chance of winning this lieutenant governor's race. John Reed, the Republican, just a 12% chance. The attorney general's race, Jay Jones has an 89% chance of winning the attorney general's race. Republicans are not in a strong position in any of these races, and Winsome Sears is in the worst. And when it comes down to the House of Delegates, which for context, in 2017 in the Virginia race, Democrats gained a tremendous number of seats in the House of Delegates races, but ultimately wasn't enough. In 2017, Republicans held on to the House of Delegates despite losing 15 seats across the chamber. Today, Democrats hold a narrow advantage, but the expectation is that they get way more than they got in 2017. In 2017, Democrats got 49 seats. Today, they're expected to get 58 and potentially even more. The chances of a Democratic supermajority, meaning 67 plus, is 14%. The odds at which Republicans have at winning control of the chamber, just 8. The GOP, as much as they can rip headlines, that they are cautiously optimistic and tell the reporters, well, if we're down by 7 and you add 2 and carry the 3 and add an extra 1 and then multiply it all by 5.5% and 3,000 mules, then we win the election. But that's not the way things work. And taking a look at the data, if it just took them any bit of reading further down, they would have seen that maybe this poll isn't all too trustworthy. And even if it is, even if the electorate is like it was in 2021, it's not saying that Spanberger loses. I think we've come to a point where, looking at elections like this, often you enter them with very much cautious optimism on both sides, right? Republicans are the incumbents in this race. And the incumbent, lieutenant governor on the Republican side, who did win her election in 2021, is running for governor. So there is reason to believe that at least early on, this race was going to be more competitive. And that's how we saw it. When the race was initially declared, the ratings weren't phenomenal for the Democratic Party. People had hesitancy behind backing and, calling the race for a variety of different reasons. Yes, it very much looked like Spanberger was going to be in a really strong position. LeVar Stoney decided that he was going to run for lieutenant governor rather than run for governor in the state. Spanberger had pretty much cleared the field, as did Winsome Sears, but we had not seen the general election come into full force. And it just seemed that there was unforced error after unforced error on Winsome Sears' part, that constantly and always she was decreasing her chance at winning in this state, decreasing her ability to resonate with voters. And what this Roanoke College poll does too, and what it tells us, is that I remember that it was an unpopular approval rating of Biden that led to Glenn Youngkin winning. Sure, this individual race was well run by Youngkin, and Terry McAuliffe had a number of blunders. But when it came down to the fundamentals, if Biden had been plus 10 like he was at August of 2021, maybe the race would have looked slightly different. I don't know if Youngkin would have lost, but I do think that the race would have been tighter. When it comes down to what we're seeing in this data, voters don't love Donald Trump. His approval rating in this data point is 41%. And they say it improved from May, but again, when you're waiting for a Youngkin plus 2 electorate, I'm not so shocked about that. Youngkin's approval rating is at 50%. It's more close to the average that we've seen. He's been pretty popular. But it is interesting, right? Voters are largely unhappy with Donald Trump. 41% find it favorable, 57% say unfavorable. Spanberger holds a plus 6, Winsome Sears is down 7. Very different in comparison to each other. And when it comes down to who people trust on certain issues, when it comes down to inflation, Republicans hold a lead of 3 in years past where they've led leads of 10 to 15. Immigration, Republicans lead by 7. Healthcare, Democrats trounce Republicans. Taxes and spending, just a 2-point advantage for the GOP. Education, which if you know anything about Virginia politics, is one of the most important factors in areas like Northern Virginia, 45 to 31 in favor of Democrats. The point is that on a lot of different issue points that voters are caring about, and the federal layoffs and everything that has surrounded the 2025 race, it is Abigail Spanberger who pulls ahead. And it is the Democratic Party that in every walk of the state, whether lieutenant governor, attorney general, governor, or House of Delegates, Democrats have the upper hand. And the Virginia GOP might be on track for an even more substantive loss than the 2017 elections, where they lost 15 seats in the House of Delegates. They lost the governorship. They did not, were not able to hold on to really anything in the state. And looking at it with Abigail Spanberger, as much as the Republican Party declares themselves cautiously optimistic, it arguably is just cope in this race. Because taking a look at this data, even a Youngkin plus 2 electorate is backing Abigail Spanberger by margins of which we saw in the 2017 strong year for Democrats, meaning that 2025 might be even better for the Democrats in Virginia, ushering them in again with the largest legislative majority they have seen in this century. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2025 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.